The difference between having a great quarter, making your number, or reporting a bad quarter often comes down to the effectiveness of your sales team's discovery calls and demos. But how do you make sure your reps are doing the right things on their calls in order to finish the quarter strong? Well, introducing Gong.io, the #1 conversation intelligence platform for B2B sales teams. Gong helps you ensure your reps are doing deep discovery calls and crisp sales demos by recording, transcribing, and analyzing their calls. And Gong allows you to understand how well your playbook is being followed and analyze how well it's working so you can constantly move the needle on your win rates. Now, if you request a demo of Gong as a result of hearing this message, you'll get a free ebook copy of my award-winning book, 0 Time Selling, 10 Essential Steps to Accelerate Every Company's Sales. So go to gong.io/accelerate to request your no-obligation demo and get your copy of my award-winning book, 0 Time Selling. Again, that's gong.io/accelerate, gong.io/accelerate. So go there now and come back and enjoy today's episode. It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 584 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. Joining me on the show today is Kevin Kruse. Actually, Kevin's coming back for a second visit. You'll want to check out his previous appearance on the show as episode 82, in which we spoke about his New York Times best-selling book on personal productivity titled 15 Secrets Successful People Know About Time Management, the productivity habits of 7 billionaires, 13 Olympic athletes, 29 straight-A students, and 239 entrepreneurs. Kevin is the founder and CEO of Leadx.org and host of the Leadx podcast, which I was fortunate enough and honored to be on just a couple weeks ago. If you want to go check out that episode where we talk about the 4 principles that lead you to sales dominance. On this episode, we're going to talk about leadership and how leadership is necessarily evolving and changing as everything around us changes, becomes more automated. We'll dive into how leaders in this environment will connect and inspire the people when there's really so much happening in terms of distractions in the workplaces. How do you capture the attention? Just as we start talking about sales, how do you capture the attention and inspire your customers? Well, how do leaders connect and inspire their people? We'll also talk about some of Kevin's 51 tips to win at life. It's a list he had put together I found really very interesting and fun, actually, and we'll talk about some of the key points from there. If you'd like to see the summary notes for this episode, go to andypaul.com/584. Now, a couple weeks ago, I'd had a quote in my weekly newsletter. Actually, if you don't subscribe to my weekly newsletter, please go to andypaul.com. Sign up. Once a week, you get a great newsletter full of information about all the things that are going on in sales and things I think are important. And I put a quote into my weekly newsletter that generated a lot of comments, a lot of really incredibly positive response. And enough so that I thought, okay, that really struck a chord with a lot of people. Perhaps I'd share it here with you. And the quote's from Vince Lombardi. In my mind, perhaps the greatest football coach ever, but I'm biased. I grew up a Green Bay Packer fan, and so anything associated with the Packers is is high on my list. But Lombardi was also a very inspirational leader and sort of a quote machine. I mean, everything that seemed to come out of his mouth was an aphorism that people were writing down and reprinting and using. So here's a quote from Lombardi about the power of habits. And if you listen to the show at all, you know that I'm a huge believer in the power of habits to shape success for you in your career and in life. And so here's this quote, and let me just share it with you quickly. From Vince Lombardi, it says, quote, "Winning is a habit. Watch your thoughts, they become your beliefs. Watch your beliefs, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character." Character, now that's a loaded word, and it's a word we don't talk enough about in sales. And we talk about trust all the time. And the importance of building trust in a relationship with a client or a buyer. But the foundation for that trust is your character, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to build trust with a customer if they don't respect you. If they don't respect your character. So I just thought it was a great quote. See how everything is interconnected that you do, that becomes your habits, that define really who you are as a person. All right, I have an important announcement for those listeners who are sales leaders, vice presidents of sales of high-growth SaaS companies, software as a service companies. You want to listen up because I'm teaming up with my friend Jocko Vanderkoy, who's the founder of Winning by Design and author of a great book called The Blueprints for a SaaS Sales Organization. And we're launching the Sales Leadership Accelerator Mastermind. Now, this is an intensive 12-month learning, coaching, and mastermind program for the vice presidents of sales of high-growth SaaS companies. So if the responsibility sits on your shoulders to scale your revenue and team to hit the 100 million mark and beyond, then the Sales Leadership Accelerator Mastermind will help you transform how you sell, scale, and develop the capability of your team to crush their goals. So if that description fits you, then this is the program for you. Now, enrollment is limited, a very small group we're going to be working with. So first come, first serve. Go to the website now to get more information. It is I'll spell it out for you. It's SaaSSlam.com. That's SaaSslam.com right now to learn more and enroll today. All right, let me remind you that today's show is brought to you in part by our friends at Gong.io. Gong analyzes your sales calls and demos so you can understand what's working and what's not. It's a great coaching tool to help managers boost rep productivity. Check it out at gong.io/accelerate. If you do that today, you get a free PDF copy of my award-winning book, Zero Time Selling. So that's gong.io/accelerate. Okay, here we go. Let's jump into it. Kevin Kruse, welcome to Accelerate.
Great to be back.
Yeah, your second appearance on it. And so I've got a standard question I ask everybody to start off the show, and this is, in your mind, in your opinion, in your experience, what's the single biggest challenge facing sales organizations today?
Well, I think I'm guessing you probably hear this from a lot. I mean, I think the biggest problem is just getting through all of the noise and getting through onto people's schedules. I think we're in that double whammy where, I started, making 50 to 100 calls a day 30 years ago, starting, my first business. And it wasn't easy then. It's never easy to cold call, to prospect, to break through to, right, an enterprise decision maker. But you always knew the numbers worked. And, whether it was 100 calls to get, 10 pickups and 10 pickups to get one meeting, whatever the math was, you knew what it was. And I just think it's tremendously harder now. I mean, we're in an age where, people aren't answering their phone. And then for a while, you could at least get through on email. A lot of people aren't getting through email, or they're more, things are getting stuck, in spam filters. For a while, it was social media, but now everybody's pounding everybody with social media. It's just very difficult to get through. And I think that when you do get through, people are just so time starved unless they've got a major problem that you can help them with in the short term. It's hard for them to work on their medium and long-term things. It's hard to get their attention to say, hey, things are going well for you, but they could be going great. And for a lot of people, going well is good enough.
Well, so now there's this, I don't say pushback, but sort of a pushback against this whole concept of good enough, right? I mean, Subir Chowdhury's book and others talking about, time to step it up, that we're sort of accepting mediocrity. And once we do that, it just becomes endemic.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it's on the side of the buyers and the organizations that this has gotten to this point. It's a problem. They are not making time for innovation. They're not making time to get to excellent. But from a sales professional standpoint, I think the reality, unfortunately, is it is just harder than ever before. I think that, you still have to provide tremendous value. I think if you are an expert, if you are educating, it gives you a leg up. But even then, it's, again, 5 years ago, pretty easy to break through with a solid webinar. Now, people are getting 10, 20 webinar offers a day, as they're not very novel. So I think it's just getting, more and more challenging to break through. But I'm curious, Andy, we haven't spoken about this before the show.
Sure.
On your own thoughts, what do you see as you're out there really with more organizations than I am on this topic? What are you seeing?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I necessarily agree that it's harder. I think it's just hard. I wrote about this recently as, that sales is neither harder nor easier than it was before. It's just hard. And, I don't think anybody ever would. I mean, I I was like you. I started out making 30, 40, 50 cold calls a day on businesses in person, not over the phone. That had its own unique set of challenges. Was it harder or easier than today? Yeah, it's just hard, right? People didn't answer the phone when we called back several decades ago. They didn't pick up the phone either. They had secretaries, right? I mean, I had secretaries that would say they'd pass the message, but never did, right? At least email doesn't make a decision whether or not to at least not yet. It's not smart enough to make a decision whether it wants to leave the message or not, right? So I think it's still just hard. And I think there's too much, I don't say too much pressure, because there's always been a pressure to make the numbers, but given that sort of the influence we have with the big data and the analytics and some of the metrics that we can track, greater transparency, I think there's too much focus on the activities and not enough on sort of helping and serving the customer and making those connections in a way that really do set you apart from your competitors, thinking outside the box a bit. I mean, I think on whole, sales is becoming a little too scripted, and understand why you do that. But I think in some cases it goes too far. And as a result, there's not this chance to make an authentic connection with somebody that once you actually do reach them. So if there's one problem, I'd probably sort of group that together and a lot of people talk about it as, we're putting too much on the salespeople's plate. It's are there too many technologies we're asking them to master? Certainly in, let's say, tech fields,
right.
Too many applications we're asking them to master, too many metrics we're giving them to track. And what happens when we do that is we sacrifice this idea of really authentically connecting with a customer.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. And my early companies were in the pharmaceutical sales training field, life sciences. And 10 years ago, they started rolling out tablets when the iPads came out and everything. And the first thing the sales and marketing organizations wanted to do was throw the brochures, the visual aids, onto the iPad. And then they sort of forced the presentation flow so that basically the pharmaceutical rep they wanted the rep to show up, flip on their iPad and stand there holding it, for 5 minutes and going out the door. And of course the reps rebelled and it was not effective. It was just to your point. They were expected to sort of run this technology and run things, and it took away the personalization, the relationship building, the rapport building, the tailoring to customer styles. And when the reps, basically did not go with the program, they then activated, in many cases, the GPS, and they started tracking, is this app turned on at the location you're supposed to be at, your third sales call at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And so then, it was sort of like a big brother forcing them to do this one quote unquote perfect sales call that marketing concocted. And of course, but the problem with these things is that they never work. So the reps could outsmart it. The reps would basically get into the doctor's office, and while they're still in the lobby, they would turn on the iPad
with the volume
and let it run through the model call, just sitting there in the chair.
Yeah.
Then they turn the thing off, stick it in their bag, go back and talk to the doctor.
Yeah, but that sort of represents sort of a leading edge of a trend that is going to happen. There's no stopping it. I mean, we're seeing artificial intelligence and machine learning and powered by greater processing power that we already see it in some customer care applications. You can call certain companies and you're being handled by by a machine, basically.
Right.
In other cases, online, you're being handled by a bot that sometimes seem kind of seamless, but that's going to have a bigger and bigger presence, just inevitably. And so what you take away from when you do that, what you do take away is the person, right? The personal aspect of it, the human aspect of it that many authors are pointing out is, at the end of the day, perhaps when in this environment, you actually become, the companies to think about this, your people have greater value if they can become more human and connect with people as opposed to less human.
Absolutely. I mean, it's our only edge left. But I do fear, it's something I talk about, on my own show, my own audience, is it's not something I fear personally, but that, the robots are coming, the AI inspired computers and chatbots and everything are coming. And I don't believe that they're going to eliminate all jobs, but I do think they're going to eliminate 80% of most jobs. And, to your point, will they eliminate all customer service reps, all call center, personnel? Will they eliminate all sales professionals? No, I don't think so. But I think that as the AI gets smarter and more effective, starting with transactional sales processes and then moving up from there, I think a lot of reps would be at risk. And the ones who will survive are the ones who can connect on an emotional level, who can be creative, who can, find ways to penetrate that account that nobody else can. So I just think it's a wake-up call or a reminder, really, for all of us to, be lifelong learners, to continue to invest in our own, careers and our soft skills, which I like to call power skills, to lead ourselves every day, to get a little bit better, because we'll be the ones that, keep our jobs as the bottom 80%, I think, will, get replaced over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, the scale is an interesting question to talk about, right? Because I don't know that I necessarily believe it'll be that great a percentage, but clearly it will be some percentage. I mean, we're horrible at predicting the future, right? But
absolutely.
But Jeff Colvin in his book Humans Are Underrated, gives an example of, I think it was just in 2013, like all these respected scientists came out and said, no way autonomous cars will ever work. Right? Too many variables at play, they can't be controlled, Yet, here we are a few years later, there's, test models been driven hundreds of thousands of miles on them, and it's clearly going to happen.
Clearly going to happen.
Right. And so even in, our ability to predict are imperfect, but I think the prediction about, again, as Colvin uses the term, to become more intensely human, is that is actually a prediction that's really true. Is, if you want to carve out a niche for yourself, whether it's in sales or whatever profession that you have, is the ability to connect with another human on a meaningful level and inspire them to take an action is going to be essential.
Yeah, and I'm glad you put that point in, to connect with them and to inspire them to take action, because that's obviously, critical, especially in sales.
Well, I think on lots of things, right?
Right.
But I think that it raises this whole question about, well, we're going to get into this topic talking about leadership, because it's one of the things that you focus on with your show and your writing is what is the impact on leadership of these same trends? If we're replacing 80% of the employees, let's say, with automation, with machines, with robots, if that's the case, what does that mean for leadership?
Well, I think that, there's, when there are managers of people, I think they really are wearing two hats. They're managing a job function. They're responsible for some output of that business unit. And then, with their leadership hat on, and this is usually the one people forget to wear, but, they're supposed to be leaders of people, not just the managers of tasks, not just managers of output. So I think, today organizations are vastly under-led as it is. I think that as we have fewer people in the jobs, you'll need fewer leaders. I don't know that, again, because of the human part, I think that managers will be able to manage bigger and bigger chunks of a business as things get automated, by watching metrics and managing. But I think, the ideal ratio of 8 to 12 humans per each human leader is a good ratio. And I wish every business card out there that had the word manager on it, I wish that word manager was replaced with coach, because I think that would be more clear, would more clearly describe what we need from our leaders, from our managers. We need them to be coaches. We need them, to coach us into, a better career path, a bright career path, coach us into all the things we need to get better at, what coaches do in sports. But a lot of times I think, that gets, in most cases, I think managers are managing the output and not leading their people. I think that I think it will be easier, and this is I can't talk about all of it, but some of the research that we're doing here at Leadx is around using AI to augment and to provide the just-in-time support and training to managers. The corporate training function is always been dramatically broken, and I've made a lot of money from that function. And yet I'm the first to say that 90+% of what someone learns in a 1-day workshop, or God forbid a 5-day workshop, they completely forget and or never apply back at work. Most e-learning programs are horrible. So the traditional way we've been training managers how to lead people, either they receive no training at all, it's poor quality training, or even the best training doesn't apply. And I think these trends you're talking about, if you imagine everybody has an Amazon Alexa type device on their desk, or at least, their phone on their hip that's always listening, then we can ask people, hey, I need to I need to interview Andy in an hour. Remind me of those illegal questions I'm not allowed to answer, or give me 5 questions I should ask, or summarize his resume for me in the next 60 seconds. I think there's going to be ways that AI can really support managers right at their time of performance in a lot of ways.
Well, that certainly seems to be the trend certainly in sales training, right? It's situational training, right? In the moment training. QStreams and other companies sort of actually in the pharmaceutical industry, I think is one of the industries they rolled that out as.
Right.
But it seems like to me is with the automation, given that, to your point precisely about how there's more managing of activities going on rather than coaching of people, that those functions could be automated as well.
Well, I think a lot of them can. I think a lot of them, the more skill, tactical based, they absolutely can. And now this is going to sound crazy, but just as, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago, if someone had suggested that it's going to be normal for all police officers to be wearing body cams that are recording everything they do all the time, people would have thought that was crazy.
Except in Minneapolis.
Right? Except in Minneapolis. Like I said, there's often a human way to bypass this stuff. But the technology has gotten to the point where it's, physically available, it's becoming more affordable, and it's becoming more normal. And certainly it isn't everywhere today, but we'll get there. Well, as going back to our pharmaceutical rep example, that I keep leaning on. Well, especially in industries where compliance is key. Why aren't we recording all of the conversations that a sales representative has with a physician? And if we are doing that, AI can even right now listen for keywords and say and report back, wow, Kevin, called on Andy and only mentioned the drug's brand name once. Well, in a 10-minute stand-up call, best practice is 5 times. And, it's one of those, it's a very simple example, but at the very least, that AI coach, that AI sales manager could, at the end of every call or at the end of every day, give me my individual coaching report. And, today it would be very crude and often wrong. 10 years from now, it's going to be a heck of a lot smarter. 20 years from now, 50 years from now, there's having those ride-alongs in sales management that used to be done by humans could really be done recorded and virtual. So I think a lot of that stuff could be done.
Well, and to your point, and some of it is already. Let's take, for instance, recording the calls. Not necessarily, though there is a new application coming out there that has been released that will do it in real time. Listen, transcribe, provide suggestions in real time. But most of them, record right now. But it's interesting. They provide coaching, or they say this is provides you the data you can use to coach your reps to make better calls. Gets inside the sort of definition of coaching that I think people are sort of confusing coaching with, I hate to say it, with the coaching, tactical coaching versus strategic coaching, which when we talk about people need to be coached more, it's not about how to make a better call necessarily. It's about problem solving. It's about them.
Yes.
And I see this sort of, unfortunately, sort of bastardization of the word taking place. I think managers are gravitating to. It's like, if I just have to, look at the analytics put out by our system that analyze the phone calls, I'll coach them how to make a better call. Oh, I did my coaching.
Right. No, I think you bring up a good point. And again, it's more of the tactical stuff that I think is going to be easier. But if I just think about, the reps I've had over the years and the reps who call on me now as a prospect or a customer, it goes back to the best ones are the ones that can connect with me on a human level. They have very high emotional intelligence or whatever you want to call it. And that's the kind of stuff that is harder to coach someone on, and I don't know. I don't know if a computer will be able to get to that level or not, but how to tell someone, hey, we just went out to that business lunch and here's 2 things that you should keep in mind if you're eating with a client, and I don't know, maybe a computer would say, hey, you ordered a salad and that tends to get stuck in your teeth. So you might not want to do that, but there's more subtle things than that I don't know that I'd ever be able to do.
Well, but I also think about coaching more in the context of I don't know if you read The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungastanier. To me,
I just spoke to him a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, to me, the single best book written about coaching. And there's a framework based on 7 questions that you ask. The manager asks just questions, right? As opposed to saying, try this, try that, which is right now what people think coaching is, which is really not. For trying to develop individuals, especially to exist in this world that survive and thrive in the world where their people skills are going to be tested. They need more of the strategic coaching, the person oriented. Yes,
no, I absolutely agree, and that's where when you get into one of the topics I care a lot about of employee engagement. That's, it is, you call it strategic or whatever. That's what the leaders need to be doing, is having these conversations around, hey, it's been 6 months. Let's have a cup of coffee. What's your career path? Where do you want to be, Andy, in 3 years, 5 years? Can you still get there, do you think, in this organization? Why or why not? Mm-hmm. Who do you need to know? What developmental areas do we need to strengthen? That's a growth button. Recognition, providing hell, I don't think I'm going to feel too good if Amazon Alexa tells me good job. Maybe I would, but I'll feel a lot better if a human
I don't think it'll be the same thing.
Does,
Yeah, well, you look at 2001 Space Odyssey, right? That's Dave, condescending voice, patronizing voice. Yeah, you can just sort of imagine that coming to fruition. Yeah, I think that's, if we're really looking at an environment where 80% of knowledge worker jobs are under threat from automation, that's really, I said, it's an interesting question to ponder. Then you start to think about all these things about this, what do people do for a living? Right. Well, I think, that's a whole other conversation of what happens if it's 10%, that have a whole lot of money because they're still employed and at the highest levels of the job scale. And then you've got 90% or 80% that are, if not unemployed, underemployed or making minimum wage. And that's where I think, people, I beat this drum so much, people think that I'm saying everybody, 90% of people will not have jobs. What I'm saying is, if you already look, there's 30% fewer manufacturing jobs than there were before. Retail jobs are going to go, the same way, followed by a lot of knowledge-based professional jobs. And if you look at now this trend can actually help some countries to do better in the short term. But look at people are talking about the wealth gap getting worse here in the United States. Okay, well, let's continue that trend. What's the wealth gap looking like in India right now, right? So I've got plenty of friends in India who are multimillionaires. Right. They've made it in tech and all the rest. Right. And yet, if you look at the wealth gap between those millionaires and what they'll encounter out in the city streets, it's huge, is this the future with the haves and have-nots? I think it's a good question. Yeah, well, we could have a whole separate show on universal basic income. There you go, UBI. UBI. There's some people think that would be the great stimulus for an incredible wave of innovation and entrepreneurialism. Yeah, universal basic income, it's interesting because when you look at it, you tend to get supporters of it from both, the left, liberals, and the right, conservatives. On the left, a lot of people say, all right, this is sort of the ultimate social net.
right? So it's everybody gets whatever it is, $1,000 a month, $1,200 a month, some basic stipend, no matter who you are. And so guaranteed basic income, and they view it as a social net. And on the right, they sort of view it as an opportunity to say, all right, look, if everybody gets their $1,000 or $1,200 a month or whatever that number is, and we can get rid of unemployment, insurance and welfare and all these other things, Social Security. Then all of a sudden we can say, they say 30 to 40% of the budget that's going to pay for social welfare programs in the United States goes to the administration of those programs. So if we want to have $1 end up in someone else's hands, it's costing $1.30 to $1.40 of all the employees and everything to manage that.
Sure.
And it'd be a whole lot easier and cheaper to just take the middle person out, the government, and just make the payments. But when I've looked at it, I don't know if you've looked at it closely.
Well, I don't say closely. I've read several articles about it.
Yeah, I don't see how the math lines up right now. Like, even if you eliminate all the social welfare programs that you can think of and replace it with usually people talk about $1,000, $1,500 a month, it would still cost more than we're spending now. And I haven't seen anybody lay the math out where like we could do that shift without an increase in taxes, or down the road, if there's an increase in the wealth, then then there'll be an increase in that tax base. But as of today, I don't see how it financially makes sense.
Yeah, I think the number I saw is to do it in the United States was like $4.3 trillion or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it
sounded about right.
Yeah, we don't have that lying around.
No,
last I checked. No. So yeah, it has to come from somewhere. It seems like it'd be a hard bet to make to say, yeah, we're going to roll out this program, and to do it, we're just going to stop. We're going to stop a lot of other forms of social welfare programs that we have that people rely on, in the thought that this is going to work. But hey, if we've got large numbers of people whose jobs are being supplanted by automation, then it's going to take something like that, though, I think, to prevent people being on the streets exercising their Second Amendment rights.
There you go.
So, yeah, very, very, very interesting. Well, hey, let's transition a little bit. I know we sort of got off track a little bit, but
transition off the robots are coming for us.
The robots are coming to kill us all, right? Is you had published something? It was the last 5 minutes or so we have here. Is you had published an article about celebrating your 50th birthday. So 51 tips to win at life.
Yeah, a little different.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
So you made it to the half century.
I didn't always know if I would.
Yeah. There were a few moments I thought about too. So I just want to go through some of those.
Sure.
Let's see. So one is the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. So tell us what you meant by that.
Well, I think, what I've come to believe after half the century, I think for when I was, a college-aged man, I was just sort of always wondering, like, what is my purpose on the earth, and what is my unique gift, and, why did God put me on the planet? What am I supposed to be doing? And I get a lot of those kinds of questions, from my readers and listeners. Mm-hmm. And, I've come to a point now where I don't think that there's one truth that comes from outside somewhere that we have to discover. I think that step one, you need to realize that your life will feel a whole lot better when it has a purpose. So purpose does matter. Having a reason to get out of bed and to fight the fight and to try to give some meaning to your life beyond what happens day to day, to try to fight for some kind of legacy, it will make you happier, will add to your life. But I also think that it's not that it's an external truth to be discovered. It's one we can choose, and it's one that can change. Mm-hmm. So the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose, and we get to choose, what that purpose is. And I think for some people, it's they know what their purpose is, or they choose their purpose when they're 7 years old, and it's the same purpose. I think others, change it around as their interests and passions change, as their skills develop. And I think, part of what I put with that second truth was, this quote I like to say is life is about making an impact, not making an income. And again, especially I think, sales professionals, entrepreneurs, and this is where I started out, when I started my businesses in my early 20s, if someone asked me what my goal was, it was to be independently wealthy by age 30. And I had a specific number and I broke it down and I did all those things and it worked, but it was not the right goal because I think, again, living for some numeric number or for the Ferrari or whatever your monetary, type goal is, you'll find it's a bit shallow. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people who've made a lot of money and have a lot of toys, but they've blown up their marriage or they've blown up their relationship with their kids, or they're just very lonely, or they drop dead of a heart attack at age 30 or 40. And I have again, unfortunately, it took me a long time to figure it out. Life isn't so much about making an income, it's about making an impact. And the irony is, the more of an impact you can make, the more you can help other people, the more value you can provide, the higher your income is going to be, the higher your net worth will end up. It can't work any other way. But people can smell it. If you're about you, if you're about the money, if you're about anything for the deal, by the end of this quarter, it doesn't feel very good from the buyer's side. And I think when you really are approaching each human as, how can I serve? What can I do to help you? How can I serve? And I so believe in my solution, in my product, in my company, that I am going to tell you about it. I'm going to track you down and tell you about it because you need this thing. I mean, it's a whole different way of living, selling, building a company. So that's really what was behind that statement.
Well, and the purpose also doesn't necessarily have to be work related. And so I think for a lot of people, and to the point is, they still will be more successful in the long run if there's something outside of themselves too, not just the customer, but that they're trying to have a purpose to serve.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So whether it's a charity, whether it's church, whether it's, some activity you get involved with, mentoring someone, helping someone else, is, doing something outside of yourself really is very powerful. And I think frees you up in ways you don't really anticipate to succeed at work.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So actually, we sort of run out of time. I was going to run through more of these, but I urge people to go to your blog and read the article because even the first 10, a lot of, you didn't get. I mean, I got through all 51, but the first 10 were enough to keep you occupied for a while.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Kevin, unfortunately, we're coming to the end. So, tell people how they can find this article on your blog and connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks for the opportunity, Andy. And if anyone is interested in this 51 Tips to Win at Life, it's at kevinkruse.com. Last name's Kruse. And then you can find all my other stuff, leadx.org. Tons of free training and information all around leadership, career advice every single day.
Yeah, and you have a podcast as well, right?
I do. The Leadx show is a daily podcast as well. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, don't want you to forget that. So, Kevin, thank you very much for coming on the show again.
Thanks.
We'll have you again. And friends, thank you for spending this time with us. Make sure you come back. Join me again tomorrow for another great episode of Accelerate. Until then, if you get a chance, really appreciate it. You go to iTunes, subscribe, leave a review. We want to hear back from you, what we can do to make this a even better, more valuable investment of your time. So thanks again for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.